Okay, let's get started. Welcome everyone. My name is Pete Simmons. I'm a director at Tridant and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar. From all of us at Tridant and Anaplan, we want to thank you for attending our Zoom session today to talk about supply chain planning and more specifically inventory optimization using the theory of constraints. We've assembled specialists from Anaplan and Tridant to showcase the platform and demo the solution in the form of an Anaplan app developed in-house by the Tridant team. Just a little bit of housekeeping. This webinar is scheduled to go on for about an hour. We have 4 speakers today, and the session will conclude with a Q&A segment at the end. Your mics have been switched to mute, but I'd like to encourage all of you to submit your questions using the Q&A chat box below. We'll try our best to answer as many questions as we can today, but if we don't get to them, please submit any inquiries about Anaplan or indeed the supply chain solution to info@trident.com. So let's get started and move on to the agenda. The agenda for today starts with a quick introduction on Tridant and our Anaplan partnership for those who have not dealt with us before. We'll then hand it over to Deb Pike from Anaplan to walk through the journey of connected planning and supply chain, followed immediately by Michael Gray, who will show us a sales and operational planning overview in the Anaplan platform. The Trident supply chain experts will then explain the concept of multi-echelon inventory optimization using the theory of constraints and walk you through a demo of the app. And finally, we've reserved some time for the panelists to answer some of your questions. But first, a little bit about Tridant. For those of you who don't know who we are, well, Tridant is an analytics company with a focus on financial and operational planning, including, of course, supply chain. We started back in 2007 in Melbourne, and we now have about 90 people across multiple geographies throughout Australia, South Africa, New Zealand, Philippines, and a regional office in Singapore. Trident has hundreds of customers across the region and pride ourselves with the domain expertise to develop business solutions, not technical solutions. We choose to work only with the top vendors in the analytics and performance management space, and today we'll be showcasing our solution on the Anaplan platform. Trident is one of the biggest Anaplan implementation partners in the region. Trident has an established history with dozens of successful Anaplan implementations across retail, manufacturing, construction, pharmaceuticals, and of course supply chain. We've developed a strategic partnership with Anaplan over the years and found Anaplan to be the optimal platform to develop our industry accelerators in the form of Anaplan apps. Anaplan's unique no coding, no scripting, cloud modeling platform allows our solutions to be business owned with no need for teams of programmers when compared with traditional legacy on-premise. Well, let's kick this off. First up, I'd like to introduce Deb Pike. Dr. Deborah Pike is a senior solutions consultant with Anaplan. She brings over 30 years consulting experience gained in both software vendor and customer organizations in projects covering frigates to light switches and, well, most things in between. Deborah's focus over the past 15 years has been in assisting organizations to develop effective supply chain strategies that streamline processes, reduce cost, enable visibility and collaboration across organizations. I'll now hand it over to you, Deb, if you could.
Thanks for that introduction, Pete. As supply chain professionals, we know how decisions made in one part of the organisation can impact on other teams. Limiting the risk associated with change isn't always easy, and particularly in today's changing environment, where we're sometimes struggling to keep operations going at the same time preparing for the new normal that's to come. Today, I'd like to focus on how supply chain teams can be agents for change. We'll look at the trends that are shaping how supply chains operate and how we can make better decisions in our supply chain strategy. There's no doubt that we're currently in a supply chain revolution. The impact of COVID-19 across the globe has forced organisations to re-evaluate the effectiveness and the efficiencies of their supply chains and the underlying technologies that have been in place for the past 5 to 10 years, and in some organisations even longer. The trends that need to be figured into our strategies have changed as well. If we look, for example, to global trade, it's now somewhat unpredictable with closed borders, added time for quarantine between ports, and changes in the time that crew can remain on ships. And we couple that in with changing policies and relationships, gives us quite a few challenges in that area. Then we look at channels. We've been seeing a shift away from traditional channels to direct to consumer over the past few years, but this has been quite exponential in the last many months. We now need to shift our focus to address the last mile capabilities to ensure our customer service remains at that level that we're looking for. From a physical labour perspective, the changes that have been introduced into organisations are certainly forecast to continue through to 2022 and beyond. And new technologies that are coming into play require new skills, so finding the right people in the right locations is increasingly difficult for all supply chain leaders. If we look to IT, our current systems have a heavy reliance on Excel for day-to-day operations. And this inhibits organisations from making rapid directional changes to adapt to the emerging trends like global regulations, emerging channels, and maintaining talent in a safe working environment. And then we add in emerging technologies like drones, artificial intelligence, and the increased use of robotic automation, all of which are transforming modern supply chains. With all of this in mind, we look to digital transformation as a means to operate smarter and more efficiently. And digital transformation touches on all aspects of the business, from people to process to the products and services on offer. The theme for today's conversation then is going to be tomorrow's execution is driven by the efficiencies that we can find today.
That makes a lot of sense to me. But how do you continue to merge the day-to-day whilst also developing and executing on the vision?
Well, to do that, we need to have a clear, actionable supply chain strategy. We need to ask three fundamental questions. How do we operate? How can we differentiate? And where do we improve? If we begin with how do we operate, we need a foundational supply chain plan to manage our capacity and connect our teams across the entire network. We call that supply chain fundamentals. The next question we consider is how can we differentiate? How can we quickly identify and make the most of our uniqueness? These are our supply chain catalysts. And then we look to where do we improve? Specifically, where do we need to spend our time and resources to be more efficient while we're meeting the needs of both our customers and our suppliers? And these are our supply chain insights. So let's dive into these three components: supply chain fundamentals, supply chain catalysts, and supply chain insights, and see how they work individually and, more importantly, how they work together. This is our honeycomb. When we think in terms of a honeycomb, we envisage a colony of worker bees where what happens in one part of the colony directly impacts the success or failure of the other parts. A honeycomb is an interconnected system. Much like a supply chain strategy, where decisions that are made in one part of the organisation, like marketing or sales, ripple across production and warehousing, and all have a flow-on impact to finance. By connecting these processes, we have the ability to quickly understand the trade-offs and have the visibility into the consequences of any decisions that are made. So let's explore this a little further. If we start with our first question, which was how do we operate, we're answering that with supply chain fundamentals. Looking to the honeycomb here, what's our game plan for S&OP? How are we going to balance demand, supply, and capacity? How do we effectively collaborate with customers and suppliers? This is setting the stage for our supply chain strategy. Once we've answered how do we operate, we can then look at how can we differentiate. And this brings us into, have we optimized our development resources? Are we accurately projecting our most costly operations? Are we making the right CapEx investments? If we're not, what are those correct investments and how can we change our processes? Managing these big ticket items can transform how we operate. Fundamentals are core to how we execute, but supply chain catalysts are the initiatives that separate us from the competition. As we know, a supply chain strategy isn't an annual set and forget activity. We need to always be looking to improve, and this is where we need supply chain insights. We need visibility into what's working, what's not working, and where do we need to focus our efforts. We consider questions such as, have we optimized pricing and inventory? Are we focused on the right projects? Do we have the right suppliers? What is our cost to serve customers? By understanding how we operate, how we differentiate, and where we can improve, we can present a comprehensive supply chain strategy that helps us deliver on the idea that tomorrow's execution is driven by the efficiencies that we find today. Thanks, Pete.
Thank you, Deb. It's now my pleasure to introduce Michael, who will be walking us through a sales and operational planning overview with Anaplan. Michael Cray is a solutions consultant for Anaplan ANZ based in Melbourne. Michael is a CPA, having worked in corporate finance roles for over 10 years before transitioning to consulting and advisory on planning, modeling, and forecasting solutions across a range of technologies, industries, and geographies. We love partnering with Michael to address our customers' challenges and pain points. Over to you, Michael.
Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone. My name is Michael Gray, and I'm a solution consultant for Anaplan. Today, I'll be providing a brief overview of the Anaplan platform itself, and I'll then showcase the product through a high-level 5-minute walkthrough of our sales and operations planning application, which really demonstrates just a very small piece of the planning functions we support for our customers every day. Now, Anaplan is a leader of cloud-based in-memory business modeling and planning for sales, operations, and finance. The platform was built from the ground up to really empower companies to plan, collaborate, and act all in real time. Anaplan enables business users across the organisation to turn the complexity of business operations into powerful, easy-to-use models, enabling business users to stay ahead of critical business events, rapidly model potential impacts, and course correct on the fly. But typically when we look at the true picture of enterprise-wide planning across organisations today, we see businesses that are stuck using a patchwork of slow, time-consuming spreadsheets and point solutions across their lines of business, such as finance, sales, marketing, supply chain, IT, and workforce. And these really impede their ability to make informed decisions. So this landscape is disconnected, insecure, laborious to manage and maintain, and it lacks scale and robustness. So with Anaplan, organisations can model any planning process for any area of their business. They can collaborate on decisions and empower the business to innovate while maintaining security and alignment to company goals, all on a singular integrated platform. Connecting data, people, and plans is the essence of Anaplan and the concept of connected planning. So connected data really means a single source of information with the right view for each role within the business. Connected people means collaborative decision-making, greater insight from collective intelligence, and rapid alignment to business change. And connected plans means the ability to analyse and refine plans in real time for one area, many areas, or right across the entire enterprise. So let's take a look at an S&OP application from a very high level. And we've built this for a fictitious organisation that we've called Halloway. And they're a global manufacturer and distributor of golf clubs, apparel, and software products. And the company operates in 13 countries globally. They've got more than 100 products and 15 distribution centres. So the Anaplan platform is really perfectly suited here to meet Halloway's demands for planning and modelling their entire S&OP process. So it allows them to execute all elements of their S&OP process in one single portal, and this includes managing their product lifecycle, reviewing and collecting risks and opportunities in their demand and supply plans, and connecting them with finance in a consensus view for effective decision-making. Now, their entire monthly cycle is actually modelled and run in Anaplan, but it can continue to adapt to Halloway's business processes as they grow, while allowing Halloway to react to real-world disruptions. So these components will come together with key dashboards that support all of the key meetings during the monthly cycle. So let's start by having a look at the product review. So the product review dashboard allows the product review teams to really understand the status of different business initiatives that will present additional risks and opportunities to the supply chain. It also gives them the ability to model out new product introductions and retirements. So our product teams will collaborate to determine all elements within our product portfolio. Next, we're going to look at the demand planning process. So within the demand review process, exceptions are created to flag a demand planner or S&OP lead about potential risks and opportunities within their demand plans. So after reviewing the different areas to gather greater insights on those gaps, they can review forecast adjustments that have been entered by different business functions and model out different scenarios to understand the impact to the overall demand plan. Now, the consensus demand inputs consider views and submissions from each area of the business, such as marketing, sales, and customers, where dashboards are built to allow each one of these areas to collaborate based on the way they plan for their business. So let's take one example of this. So if we look at our sales reps inputs dashboard, which is obviously coming from our sales teams, we can actually see sales reps can enter forecast adjustments to be submitted for review, which will be captured as potential adjustments for inclusion in a consensus demand plan scenario. So other functions participating in the consensus forecast besides our sales team could be marketing, who can enter promotional plans at the brand or the brand category level, with inputs perhaps coming from a connected trade promotions planner. Finance inputs are concerned with revenue and they're linked to connected annual operating plans. Customer collaboration is planning by individual item and specific customer location. And as I mentioned before, all submissions from the business have different ways of planning, so Anaplan facilitates this whilst also enabling a common plan for generating and that consolidated consensus review. And that consensus review is generated in real time at the appropriate view for the S&OP meeting. So we've actually finalised our demand plan. Let's now take a brief look at our supply review. Now, in the supply review landing dashboard, supply planners can then review gaps associated with inventory targets, capacity, and sourcing plans. Let's focus our attention today on just one of those gaps by taking a look at our capacity alerts. So within the capacity dashboard, planners can review impact to capacity utilisation, where they can activate different levers such as pre-building inventory, contract manufacturing. And when I click on one of these, we can actually see the ability to see that financial impact all in real time. By being fully integrated with our financial function, we can also request a capital project through our capital expenditure model to expand capacity of one of our current plans and submit our CapEx request directly during the S&OP meeting. Now, the penultimate process step is the pre-S&OP stage. Now, as the different planning teams capture risks and opportunities within their meetings, these are gathered in a consensus view for the S&OP team to review. The S&OP team can then utilise Anaplan's scenario comparison capabilities to conduct further sensitivity analysis on these business risks and opportunities, compare and score the scenarios, and craft a proposal for the different scenarios to follow for the executive review and approval. And that's our final step being the executive S&OP meeting. And this is supported by a balanced set of KPIs associated with each plan submitted by the S&OP team, enabling the decision making when selecting and approving the recommended plan for the business. So hopefully what you've seen from this very brief introduction to Anaplan, as seen through the lens of an S&OP business process, is Anaplan's flexibility, collaboration capabilities, and real-time calculation engine, allowing companies to run their S&OP processes based on their needs and maturity level, connect functions right across the supply chain and beyond, and evaluate and compare scenarios for effective decision-making in a matter of seconds. So I hope you found the short overview of Anaplan and that high-level demonstration useful, and thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Michael. Now, I want to take this opportunity to remind everyone to keep your questions coming in using the Q&A chat box below. Our panelists will be answering your questions live today. Now, let's dive into the guts of our webinar, inventory optimization. In discussions with supply chain professionals, we at Tridant are often told things like, well, Pete, I cannot control SKU level inventory across our channels, or I need to manage supply chain volatility. Then we have generic statements such as, well, our spreadsheets are limiting our ability to manage complex supply chain planning. We've got lots of data and the spreadsheets are just not coping. Now, I'm sure you're all familiar with these. These are real and pressing concerns. We've lined up Alyssa Brennan and Amit Chavan to showcase how to address these challenges. Over to you, Alyssa.
Thank you, Pete, and hello, everyone. The application that we're discussing today was built by Amit Chavan, one of Tridant's principal consultants. Amit has about 18 years of work experience in supply chain planning and operations. He's also an expert on multi-echelon inventory planning, statistical planning, and supply chain process advisory. As a certified master Anaplanner and a solution architect, he also has the technical fluency to implement solutions for supply chain functions. And so he'll be the one who's taking you through the demonstration today. My name is Alyssa Brennan. Both Amit and I are based here in Singapore with Trident, and I'll be taking you through the theory behind the solution before Amit jumps into the demonstration. The inventory optimization application, which we refer to as the IO app, applies multi-echelon inventory planning based on the theory of constraints. And I'll explain why that's important in the next couple of slides, but this really allows us to combine dynamic inventory buffers with insights to eliminate the bottlenecks in the process. And by catering to complex interdependencies among stocking locations, the app provides value through increasing efficiency with automation, therefore allowing teams to really focus on higher value tasks through efficacy by minimizing over or under supplying. The IO app is designed really to improve collaboration among business functions for connected planning. And that leads to increased revenue when you're able to maintain optimal stock levels. Also, it reduces working capital or excess distribution costs. And so that really helps also to minimize your risk by making sure planners can meet internal and external compliance policies as well. So if you're wondering, what is multi-echelon inventory optimization? This is a supply chain planning approach, which is designed to optimize inventory across multiple nodes of the supply chain ecosystem. And so modeling with interdependencies of multiple stages allows different types of inventory, like cycle stock or safety stock, to match time phase demands. So single inventory optimization only addresses the inventory stocked at a single location or distribution center, rather than right-sizing the inventory levels across the whole network using a multi-echelon approach. This helps manufacturers and multi-step distributors to ensure they have the correct levels of all inventory types across all nodes in the extended supply chain. So what is theory of constraint? So the IO app also enforces the theory of constraint, which is really a notion that every system has at least one constraint that consequently determines the output of the system and hampers the organization's progress or increased throughput. So the best way to manage the constraint is by using a drum buffer rope approach and by applying a planning and scheduling solution that really protects against the vulnerability and variability at that constraint. So this helps to avoid the bullwhip effect. The bullwhip effect can occur when changes in consumer demand cause planners to order more goods to meet the new demand. And that actually causes an increasing swing in inventory demand up the supply chain in response. And that leads to a whole lot of inefficiencies in the process. So the IO app helps you to avoid those inefficiencies, like the bullwhip effect. And this is an overview of what we're going to show you today in the app. We'll walk you through some of the data management processes, how easy it is to get started with the app and with your data and your products. We'll go through the process of replenishing store stock from distribution centers, including the logic behind achieving an optimal daily replenishment plan. And we'll also go through the process of replenishing distribution center inventory from suppliers. So that's enough for me. I'll go ahead and hand over to Amit now to walk you through the demonstration.
Hello everyone, my name is Amit. Many thanks to joining this session covering a demo on inventory optimization app. This application covers supply chain network of multiple nodes like suppliers, DC, and multiple stores, which all are interconnected. In this demo, I'm going to show you how inventory planning is synchronized and connected across each of the supply chain node and how dynamic buffer is calculated for each of the node using the theory of constraints principle. So I'll just open the app. Okay, so there are basically three main components of the app. One is data management. Second is DC to stores replenishment planning. And third one is DC inventory planning and supplier order management. Before I go into the details, let me quickly show you the dashboard of store planner, how it will look like. It is necessary for any stores planner to work upon exceptions and priority considering the large numbers of SKUs to manage. In this dashboard, a planner will be able to identify period by period a replenishment priority at product and stores level. So we can see here product and stores, and which is also supported by this RYG color codes. A red color indicates acute shortage and buffer has drastically reduced. Yellow color indicates buffer needs to be replenished before it gets converted into red zone. And green color indicates there is sufficient buffer. These RYG zones are further ranked and prioritized based on the shortage ratio, which helps planner to focus on the priority. The replenishment plan is further connected with DC replenishment plan, where DC can review priority-based DC replenishment plan and place supplier orders considering the MOQ. So basically, these are the orders. So MOQ is here, so minimum order quantity, and here they can see all these MOQs and place supplier orders. So let me just start from beginning to update the reliable replenishment time. So total lead time consists of review time and lead time. The next part is categorization of SKUs. In this dashboard, entire count of SKUs are dynamically categorized into a quadrant based on FSN, XYZ, and ABC analysis. ABC analysis is based on product-wise percentage revenue contribution. XYZ analysis is based on coefficient of variation, which is based on sales data. And FSN analysis is based on velocity of the product. The related calculations are indicated over here. System dynamically calculates all these levels. Okay, just let me show you quickly how system calculates the buffer. There are two important factors or drivers. One is paranoia factor and the other is service level settings. There is an option given to upload on-hand stock and in-transit stock. And this is the calculation module where all these calculations will be done to calculate the dynamic buffer. And also we can see the RYG level over here. So paranoia factor is how it is placed is basically we can see there are quadrants, like one is fast moving, slow moving, and non-moving. Other is ABC analysis. And the third one is XYZ analysis. So based on the quadrant, based on the company policy, we can set these factors, set these numbers. Like service level also, within the quadrant, we have placed for A class, fast moving, and X category product, we have placed that as a 95%. Okay, now just let me check the product which will get affected if I change this number from 95% to 80%. So if I scroll down and check, so this is the SKU which is under store B. Now the dynamic buffer is 856 numbers, 856 numbers, and which is into the A category, X category, and this is fast moving. Okay, now just let me quickly change this to 80%. Now the dynamic buffer has been changed here. It has become now 438 numbers. And this level has turned to yellow because now the dynamic buffer level has been reduced. right? And yeah, so this is how the dynamic buffer will get calculated. Also, there is a point which is considered over here, that stores consumption is usually happens into the pack size, whereas the DC requirement has to be given into multiples of pack size. So that's why the net requirement for DC is calculated here, considering or in multiples of pack size. So even though the quantity is 2,283, whereas the requirement for DC is generated 2,310, considering the pack size.
Amit, there's just one other question that we've got. So you mentioned the paranoia factor, and can you expand a little bit on what the paranoia factor represents?
Yeah, sure, Elisa. The paranoia factor is a term used in theory of constraints, which covers management's concern whether to keep too high buffer levels or too low buffer levels. This factor will vary with all types of products. This will be a higher number if there is a frequent need for a product, or not having that product will result in a major loss. A lower number will be used when the need for the product is low and failure to make the product available not that detrimental.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, we just move to the next part, which is store's performance. So at the end, if we want to review the store performance, then we can just review it here on this dashboard. Likewise, we can see here how system has calculated the dynamic buffer period by period. You can see the numbers are different. The dynamic levels are different, and those are calculated. These buffers are calculated dynamically. Also, we can select here stores or the required SKU, or we can see the data at summary level also, right? So yeah, and this chart indicates the status of a product at each of the stores, how many times the product was in RYG zone, period by period. And over here, we can check the performance of the stores and product with respect to the count of RYG status. So I can change the period here, and I can change the status. Yeah. So this number will be dynamically calculated for KPI point of view. Now the next part is the DC level settings. Let me just open this dashboard where we can see supplier details or SKU and supplier mapping. Also, we can mention all unit of measurement and all other terms. Then there is a MOQ mapping. So MOQ is basically a minimum order quantity. Every supplier may have different type of MOQ. Some suppliers may have MOQ based on lot size. Some suppliers may have MOQ based on dollar value, likewise. So we can have this mapping over here in this table. And here is the lead time from DC to supplier. So here the total lead time is calculated. Next part is categorization of SKUs at DC level. This dashboard is quite similar to the dashboard which we have seen for SKU. Only the difference is that this module or this dashboard doesn't have stores as a dimension. This module has DC as a dimension and product as a dimension. Okay, so all these calculations are mentioned over here, and system will automatically calculate and categorize the SKU count in this quadrant. Now this is dynamic buffer management at DC level. Earlier we saw at stores level. Now this is at DC level. It's more or less same like stores. Here the additional part is like having a promotional planning activity. So if suppose a planner would like to have a promotion, then planner can update the start date, end date, type of promotion, and uplift. All these details can be updated over here, and all this input gets connected with this module, and the dynamic buffer will get calculated at DC level. And here we can see the RYG status at DC level. Also, there is a priority mentioned based on the shortage ratio. So a planner will clearly understand which product needs to be ordered first and subsequently. Yeah. On the right hand side, we can see how system has calculated the MOQ. Sorry, how system has calculated the buffer considering the MOQ. Okay, so let me just show you. This is actually a net requirement calculated by a system in multiples of pack size, which is 38,950, whereas my MOQ is 50,000. So if I just remove this override quantity from here, the system will indicate doesn't meet the MOQ, because my MOQ is 50,000, whereas my net requirement over here is 38,950. So I need to place and override this order quantity. So let me just quickly override this to 20,000. I'll add 20,000 to my order, and you can see it here. Now the status is MOQ is meeting now. Okay, so now the net requirement for supplier will be 58,950 numbers. Okay, and here at the end, you can see there is a workflow management. So if planner would like to place an order, then he can just take it over here, so that these numbers will get transferred to the next dashboard through workflow. Let me just open this next dashboard.
Sorry, Amit, we have just one question about the overriding. And the question is, can we add a comment when we override the quantity?
Yeah, sure. So we can add the comment when we override the quantity, and the same option is also available, and we can customize as per our requirement. It is very flexible to use, and we can see here that there is a column section. We can a planner can just put the comments.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah. So this is how the order can be placed. And yeah, so we can see here system automatically indicates the need by date, and automatically identifies what should be the order number. So this is a unique order number for each of the order. System identifies period by period. Also, there is an option for exporting the order. If I click here, the order will get exported and into the Excel format. So it is very easy for any planner to export it into Excel and just upload it in any other legacy system like SAP or Ariba kind of thing. Here we can see the details of fleet. Whereas suppose a planner would like to see what will be the utilization if he or she places the order over here to a supplier, and what will be the optimal fleet they can use considering cost and utilization factor. So this can be, this is indicated over here for better decision making.
So Amit, just one more question while you're here. And the question is, can we customize the order export, the format of the order export?
Yeah, definitely. We can customize the export format and template as per our requirement. And yeah, we can do that, definitely.
Great, thank you. And there's not a question, but there is a comment that says, wow, this looks amazing. How easy is this to get started?
Yeah, it is very easy. It's kind of plug and play kind of application. Only some of the master data or metadata we need to change, and it is really simple to use, and it is very scalable also. Yeah. So the next part is reviewing the performance of DC. Here we can see dynamic levels at DC, dynamic buffer levels at DC level. Our system has calculated the buffers, and yeah, and also we can see the performance of each of the product at DC level. So let me just go back to the master data part, data management part. It is very easy to update master data and transactional data to update in Anaplan. One can export the template and import it with the desired frequency, and frequency could be once in a day, once in a week, and system automatically updates the hierarchy also. That is also possible in this application. So just let me show you this tab. So here I can export the template, and I can save it on my desktop. I can update it, and again I can upload it. So it's very easy to manage the data and master data. Now this is my store master and my DC master. So I can update this, add as much as stores and DC I want in this master. And the last one is uploading sales data. So here is an option to upload the sales data. So historically we can upload the data by stores, by SKU. Yeah, so we can upload the data, transactional data over here. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Right, thank you, Alyssa and Amit. That was really an elegant way to solve a complex problem. We've had a few questions come in over the presentations. Now, if you've got any questions as well, please continue to submit them now. I'm going to start off with a few for our panelists. The first one off, Michael, this one's probably for you. It says here, my organization already uses Anaplan in the finance department. How does the licensing work to enable the S&OP functionality? Michael, if I could revert to you.
Yeah, thanks, Pete, and a good question. Look, I think in terms of the licensing, I might answer this quite broadly rather than getting into a case-by-case specific on this. But firstly, for those new to Anaplan, Anaplan's a software as a service solution. So it is a subscription service based on annual term periods and the number of named users that will actually interact with the platform. So your annual fees are going to include things like your software maintenance, all of your software maintenance, your upgrades, your support, your on-demand training. But interaction with the platform is actually the key word here. So unlike a lot of other software providers where you're going to be licensed by each product or by each solution, with Anaplan, you're actually licensed for the platform itself. So, if you've got, to your question, if you've got existing Anaplan users, say in finance, that will want to leverage S&OP, say in Anaplan, there's actually no additional cost for that use case per se. If you're introducing new members of the organization to planning functionality in Anaplan, then that would actually require the purchase of those extra seats. But I think the point of difference is that customers are not actually purchasing licenses to a solution, whether it be a finance solution, an HR, a supply chain, and so forth. The license actually covers the platform more broadly.
Great, thank you, Michael. Next question here, probably one for myself. Question here is regarding the S&OP module. You mentioned that no coding needed for Anaplan. Typically, how long does it take to set up the S&OP solution for a multinational corp? And what approach would you typically take on working with a client for the first time? For example, pilot POC, etc. Now that's an excellent question, one we get all the time. As Michael mentioned, Anaplan is a modeling platform. It's very agile. The real trick to it is it's cloud-based, no scripting, no coding. But typically, when we focus on S&OP, we start on the demand planning side of things. So that starts traditionally with a statistical forecast. We automate that. We go to the granularity down to SKU, store, whatever is required. But when we focus on the deliverables, it's really focused on an agile methodology of sprints. So typically, and don't quote me on this, but quite typically between 10 to 12 weeks, you will get a demand forecast quite well defined. That's everything that's required. You know, things like the data hub, your metadata going in, you know, that's your structures, your stores, your categories, your products, your timelines, your timeframes in terms of your periods and financial calendars. So I would say typically 10 to 12 weeks, you're up and running. And then you start to add things like, you know, new product introductions or end of life planning. You know, you work on the supply side, the consensus side, and then you put it all together. So once you have the framework, things are delivered within weeks, not months. And generally it's using the accelerator framework. It's very easy to achieve, and certainly achieves your goals for getting out of old platforms such as spreadsheets or gut feel. So that's an excellent question. I'm going to move on to the next one whilst we have time. Amit, I'm going to refer this one to you. Question here is, can the fleet planning be extended to more detailed planning?
Yeah, definitely. We can use Anaplan Optimizer to optimize overall logistic cost. The Optimizer tool is basically a pre-configured optimization engine, which can generate plans of how best to execute. Okay. And in addition to fleet planning, you can also use the Optimizer to allocate production to plants based on specific priorities such as cost reduction or revenue maximization.
Thanks, Amit. Look, just time for another couple of other questions. Got a lot of questions, if I could summarize it, around integration. Michael, this is probably the best one for you. Could Anaplan's S&OP app get connected to different instances of, say, SAP or source systems? And how does the integration work typically?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks, Pete. Yeah, I did see a few questions coming through about integration. So I'll probably keep it general, but we do have a lot of information we can share specific to different source systems, whether that be around SAP, ECC, BPC, but essentially Anaplan can integrate with nearly any system. So, and really it depends on how complex your integrations, or how complex you want them to be, you can make them. So it may be as simple as going from a flat file upload, which is typically where a lot of customers may start, in terms of just understanding how the data moves between those different source systems, through to a fully automated process and very bespoke process, leveraging our Anaplan REST API. In between that, there's a number of different utilities you can take advantage of. We have a free batch utility process that automates a lot of the integration protocols between different source systems and Anaplan, called our Anaplan Connect data integration utility. We also partner with a number of different ETL providers. So a lot of our customers already have in-house best of breed ETL tools such as MuleSoft, Informatica, SnapLogic, Delboomi. They have native connectors to pass data back and forth between those different between the different systems. So we also have direct integration with tools such as Salesforce for both native and custom objects. So there's a range of different opportunities to leverage more automated routines for integration between both Anaplan and source systems. So I hope that answers that question.
Thank you, Michael. I think it was very concise. I've got one here on how you set the paranoia factor. I think, Amit, thank you very much. I think I hope everyone can see this, but he's responded in the chat session itself. So I'm going to go to one that hasn't been answered. Michael, you're doing such a great job. Maybe the last one here for you. Before we wrap up the Q&A session. How do you assign weightages to the scenario modeling for demand forecasts? And what are the external variables you can integrate into the models?
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, it's probably two parts. I'll answer the first part first. I mean, looking at talking about external data sets. So what you saw in the demonstration that I showcased was a standard S&OP model. So at this point in time, we weren't leveraging any external data sources, but we do offer integrations, like I said before, around our different integration methods to those external data sources and forecasting algorithms that can easily accommodate external causals. So it might be things like weather or macroeconomic data, these types of things. And we've got many customers leveraging external data in conjunction with machine learning algorithms. We've got a very large North America customer customer, they've incorporated weather data into their forecast via a third-party machine learning tool. So we can integrate with machine learning platforms like R and Python, or those cloud-based ML tools, AWS Forecast and so forth. Just on the scenario weightings, again, talking about this app specifically, you know, as you set up each scenario, you can actually give it any number of KPI weightings. So you saw some of those, and then you can actually go about comparing those scenarios based on your key criteria, such as units, it might be financial revenue, might be cost of sales, through those what-if scenario dashboards. And you could also compare or sort those by the relevant weightings. So again, hopefully that answers that question, but we can provide more details offline if that's of interest.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you very much, Michael, once again. That's all the questions we have time for today. However, we would like to answer all of your questions, so please send them through to info@trident.com. The team will get to them as soon as possible. We'd also like to take this opportunity to point you to the Trident Supply Chain Solutions page. You can find that on trident.com, Supply Chain Planning Solutions. There's a link in the bottom of the slide. Here you'll find an inventory optimization brochure. There's also a self-service online supply chain health check questionnaire, and I'd encourage all of you to try that out. It'll give you a nice score to see where you're at in terms of maturity level. Trident is also offering a limited number of complimentary discovery sessions on our supply chain solutions. To take up this offer, please contact us on the numbers in the next screen, and as usual, email us at info@trident.com. This concludes our webinar for today. Thank you for spending the time with us. We hope you got something out of the session. Please look out for future sessions on supply chain. If you'd like a recording, please contact us with the contact details yet again on the screen, and we'll send you a link. Last but not least, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all our presenters. We appreciate your time and effort in putting the presentation together for our audience. And everybody, take care. We hope to see you next time. Have a good day.